What if the biggest battle in leadership is completely invisible? Not the market, not the competition, not the economy, but the quiet voice inside, asking, do I really belong here? How many people today walk into boardrooms, conference rooms, leadership meetings, while silently carrying self-doubt? They look confident externally, but internally, their mind is noisy. Fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of not knowing enough, fear of being exposed as the youngest, the newest, or the least experienced person in the room. And that is exactly why the Bhagavad Gita still feels deeply relevant today. Because 5,000 years ago, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, an undefeated warrior suddenly lost trust in himself. Arjuna had never lost a battle, but standing between two armies, he froze. He looked at Krishna, his mentor, his guide, and said, I cannot fight. And what is extraordinary is that Krishna does not shame him for breaking down. He does not ask him to pretend. He does not ask him to perform strength. Instead, the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita begins the moment a leader admits, I don't know. And maybe that is exactly what modern leadership needs today. Because somewhere along the way, leadership became performance. A performance of certainty, a performance of confidence, a performance of emotional control. But beneath that performance, many leaders feel exhausted, disconnected, and alone. And joining us today is Dayna Adelman, a storyteller, global corporate affairs professional, and author of The Youngest One in the Room. Dayna has spent much of her career as the youngest and sometimes the only woman in the room. She has lived and worked across 4 countries and 3 continents, navigating pressure, self-doubt, leadership, burnout, and the journey of finding her authentic voice. So today, we explore vulnerability, burnout, ego, self-awareness, AI, authentic leadership, and the invisible pressure leaders silently carry every day. Because the battlefield is never only outside. It is always inside. Welcome to Beyond the Battlefield.
Welcome to Beyond the Battlefield, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'll just give a context of what we do with this podcast, and it will help both of us to take the conversation forward. So, Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years back on a ground of a battlefield, where between 2 armies, one of the warrior who has faced countless battles and he has lost none of them, has stopped trusting himself and froze in between the armies. And he asked his charioteer, he was his mentor, his friend, who chose to become a charioteer. And there is a story behind it, we'll talk sometime. But he asked his charioteer that, I can't fight. And at this time, his mind has become noisy. Externally, nobody can even fully see the battle, what is happening inside him. And that's what sparked an idea in my mind that is every day, every one of us are going through such kind of battle. And many times I talk to my team within my group, my family, that today we are afraid of sending one email. Similar way, this warrior was not ready to shoot one arrow, where he has not lost a single battle in his lifetime. And this remind me a very beautiful title of your book, The Younger One in the Room. So when we walk into an important boardroom or conference room, people expect certainty, confidence, clarity. But internally, there may still be a doubt, pressure, fear of not being enough, right? And sometimes we often enter into the room as the new one. I see a lot of young leaders getting into the conference room. So have you experienced that gap between an external expectation versus your internal reality?
Absolutely. And I think, as you pointed out, it's one of the most natural feelings, especially when you're first entering those rooms early on in your career. There can be a lot of self-doubt. Why am I here? What can I contribute? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to say something stupid. The cycle of thought in your mind can just flow and flow and flow. But upon reflection, there is a reason why you've been invited to be in that room. And I think once you understand and accept that, there's a lot of power that gets unlocked in that notion. Your role as the most junior person might be there to take notes, and that's totally fine. You might be there to drive part of the conversation, to give a presentation. If you can figure out why you've been invited to the room, that then changes the mindset and shifts from that internal struggle of why am I here? What do I have to offer? How can I contribute? To this is my role. This is why I've been invited. I've earned a spot here. I've been invited is the key word. I'm wanted here. And I'm going to show up and be my best self and operate from that place of confidence as the best as I can at this level in my career because someone wanted me here.
When it comes to inner battle, right? And when I say inner battle, there are multiple things going on in our mind. And what excited me about Bhagavad Gita is not only this is just an opening of the scripture where there's set a context. And there is a big story. If you have heard about Mahabharata, this is just a part of a beginning of the Mahabharata battle. And what happens is, when you are into those new rooms, when I say new room, there are multiple things we can talk about where you have been trying first time. And most of the time, as a young leader, we try to appear as strong. But many times, if we keep on trying appear as a strong, it becomes exhausting. And that's what was happening in this battlefield as well. Arjun, who was the warrior, he keep on giving an excuse and logical reasons why he should not fight. And today, I always say that today you and me will agree to those reasons. Even if you read the book, you will say, till the Krishna comes and speak up, we will agree that he should not fight. Now, in many corporate environment today, leader feels similar pressure to always look composed, intelligent, confident, and emotionally in control. And over time, what happens is, that leadership itself start becoming a performance. And, appearing as confident, appearing as composed, appearing as a leader, everything I'm controlling every emotion, right? That start becoming performance. So if you've seen those kind of leader, have you seen that, slowly disconnected from themselves because they spend too much energy in managing perception? Or this is a style which we need today?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. And I've seen a progression in my career from leaders, how they thought they were supposed to show up versus what actually makes an effective leader. And having humility, having vulnerability are such important qualities and traits. And in my early career days, I maybe could have been fooled by some leaders who were always acting or in that, presentation mode. But now I can tell right away when a leader is just, playing the part instead of actually being the part. And then you start to see right through, and then there's a breakdown in trust. If you're unwilling to be vulnerable, how can I trust that you actually know what you're doing? So I think, to answer your question, yes, I've seen all different types of leaders. And in today's world, I think it is super important for a leader to be able to say when they don't know something, whether it be a new technology that they just don't have experience with. Very few people today, maybe people are dabbling with AI and the tools, right? But there are very few people who I work with who are in my industry who are experts. It's so new. How can you be? And it's always evolving and changing. So I'm just using this as an example. If a leader were to get up there and claim they know everything about the tools, really? And then all of a sudden, everything else that comes out of their mouth is, do I believe that? Do I trust this person? So I think vulnerability is a huge part in being a strong leader today. And I think it is obvious when you're not being vulnerable.
And when you say that, many leaders come up and say that I don't know this. That's not wrong. And in the true teaching of this Bhagavad Gita starts when Arjun comes up and say that I am surrendering it to you. I can't fight. I don't know. And please help.
Yes.
And that is something as a leader we should learn to
Totally.
uh, and we say that reverse mentorship. A lot of young generation now joins it. Someone with 20-25 years of experience should not shy away to learn from those people as well. They bring out a lot of new understanding, new perspective. Today, young leaders' perspective is different than what you and me have, or maybe our leaders have today. So accepting that I don't know is something which very important to understand, and that's where learning starts. The beginning of learning starts when I say I don't know. If I say that I know everything, that's a subtle ego I'm carrying with me, which is making sure that I'll not learn.
Yeah. And I think to add on a little bit further, the concept of team and teamwork is as old as the ancient scriptures say when they talk about, the army going to the battlefield. If the general was capable of defeating another army on his or her own, they wouldn't have a team. But that's not the way it is. You go to the battlefield with a team, with an army. You go into the boardroom with a team, and everyone has a role. Everyone has a purpose. So more than ever, it is so important for leaders of today to recognize and help everyone rise in their role. If you want to be an individual contributor, that's fine too, but then you shouldn't be in a corporate or team environment.
What I see that, even an individual contributor is a leader. Leader doesn't mean you manage people. Leader means that how do you lead yourself first? And one of the concepts what we discuss is not leadership, but followership. And in the scripture, it has been identified that when you are a leader, it doesn't mean in a family you can be a leader, in a friend circle you can be a leader. Leader doesn't mean that people follow you. Leader means that you understand your team, understand who is following you, and they are what level. And if you look at this learning, whole leadership learning, Krishna starts from this level. So basically, this level is he doesn't underestimate Arjuna that he doesn't know anything, and he starts with a very friendly word at that time when you a very harsh word, but you can only speak to your close friend. That's how he start the learning. But slowly he understand that this fellow is not getting where I am. So he comes down to the level where he is. And he goes up to the bottom, up to the level where, every individual in this world can understand. So if people have gone through the complete 700 verses, he can understand that there is something for everyone, every individual to be successful in life.
Yes.
So that's how I had also learned the leadership, that it's not about that you can control many things. It's about how you enable people to do everything, right? So one of the things which what you and me are doing, which we were discussing last time, and that's for excite me also about what you do. Like you said that you wrote a book, and you wrote a book. So what I feel, and I started this podcast, and many times I was telling to someone in today morning that how it is going. I said that I don't know how it is going. It is happening through me. I have never thought that you and me are going to discuss today, 1 year back, right? So same way, you also created a book. I don't think you had thought that at the beginning of the career you are going to do this, right?
No.
Now, one thing which I want to understand, and that's what everything what we discuss about the inner battle. We say that battlefield is never outside; it is always inside. Now, so help me and everyone to understand what has transformed inside you when you started the book and completed the book.
Yeah, this is such a good question. And it's a conversation I love to share, because I think most people assume if you write a book, you had an intention to write a book. That was not the case for me. The book started as a very deep series of personal reflections that I was doing with a coach over time. And she was encouraging me to write down different stories from the first decade of my career. Sometimes it was about identifying what gave me energy, what drained my energy, And I was at a crossroads in my career where I was trying to figure out, what do I really want next? So this was done as an explorative exercise for myself. And that was it. And so I had a bunch, and I do love to write. I'm a communicator by nature. So I was having fun with this assignment. And little by little, I started to think, it's interesting. People write memoirs, professional career memoirs at the end of their career or when they've achieved a certain level of status. Maybe they're very well known in a certain community and they get a book deal and they tell their story. But I'm just a regular person who has lived human experience and I've learned along the way. And so I started thinking at one point, maybe someone would enjoy reading this. I used to keep a blog when I lived overseas, and I would get really positive feedback on the stories and, people who followed the experience. And so I had this idea at some point in time to start to structure it as a book. And then I completely stepped away from that because going back to vulnerability, it's my personal story. It's highs, lows, everything I've learned along the way. And to share that with the world, that's a very big and bold step to take. I didn't think I wanted to do that. I was worried about it. What if it's not well received? What if it limits career prospects down the road? So many things could potentially go wrong. And over time, through some coaches and mentors and some close colleagues, there was a lot of encouragement. No, I really think people would like to read your story. People gravitate towards other human stories. And while my story is different from your story, there are elements and red threads that connect all of us because it is human after all. And so I finally was talked into pursuing publication. And I made my publisher wait quite a bit of time. I think it was 6 to 8 months where the offer was on the table. And I said, you know what, I'm getting cold feet. I don't know if I want to do this. But it ended up being an incredible journey, first and foremost for myself, because it was a self-reflective driven journey that brought a lot of clarity to my life and to how I wanted to lead my life moving forward. And then it's brought so much joy in sharing it with other people. And if you want to read my story, it's in the book, right? It's there. But I think the best part of the experience now after publication has been hearing other people's stories and finding the commonalities and learning from other people. And so that has been a completely unexpected but joyful part of this journey as well.
Perfect. I think I can resonate many things what you are saying. And it is similar to what I did, but I had one learning which was, I would say now it is very grounded into myself, but I wanted to experience that. So one of the learning is about attachment. And when we say attachment is that, can you be committed while internally detached with the outcome? Now, we talk about commitment into leadership multiple times. And when you and me are on the job, and we have a responsibility and we are committed to that. But ultimately, we are looking at the outcome, correct? Outcome for myself. Definitely, there will be outcome for the organization and the team for we work. But in a inner self somewhere, there is an interest of individual as well, individual as an I, right? Now, that's where, I was falling short of getting that learning out of it, right? So when in a similar way, I used to keep a lot of notes, a lot of learning. When I'm traveling in aircraft, there is no signal, so you keep on noting a lot of small notes into my iPad notes and iPhone notes and multiple places. I thought I'll bring it to some form, and this is how this format came in. But one of the things which similar way you said that whether you'll able to do, whether you'll complete, whether you'll have job, and both of them will go on. I was talking to my wife. She said that you should try. If doesn't happen, you are not losing anything. But that commitment of not gaining anything, detached with the outcome. For example, today you and me are committed for this recording. Now, that's where there is no individual outcome, but this outcome is going to help a lot of people. And that's where this learning I want to practically apply. And definitely in a business, in a job, in a role, you can't do this. And that's where this has come up. But I think that's where I was, able to resonate with what you said, that how things get transformed of an individual. And there are a lot of blind spots open up into me. And I want to, acknowledge that I used to say that I'm very calm. But when you get into this, where you are committed, but you know that outcome is not for you, a lot of blind spot will come up about ego, about fear, about greedy, being greedy. A lot of things will come up, and those things will get purified, right? And that's where last time we were discussing that one of the example I told you, that does sun ask how many gigawatt energy you have produced yesterday? Sun will rise every day, right? That's what things move. Moving forward, one thing which also we have learned, and I thought I'll discuss with you today, that one of the profound learning is, where Krishna says that better to be in your dharma, even though it is imperfect, rather than be in a dharma of someone else which is perfect. Now, that is about, when we say dharma, it is actually your path, your role, correct? And I have seen that today a lot of leader and leadership culture, it constantly pushing toward imitation. So people copy communication style, that language, their branding, even sometimes confidence, the perception of confidence. So have you gone through such phase where you felt in pressure to lead like others around you before fully trusting your own natural voice?
Yes, I have. This is such a deep question because I'm doing my own reflection as you pose the question. I think in the early days, you find leaders who you really admire. And sometimes, to your point, it's natural to just try to copy them. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to try that. What happens if you just copy without adding your own spin? You fall into a trap because you're not that person. You're your own human being. So you need to find the balance of, what is it about that person that I admire? They show up with confidence. Okay, well, why is that? Is it because they're a deep subject matter expert? Is it because they have a special skill for holding the attention of a room? How can I learn from that person and identify the skills that I admire, but figure out what is the Dayna approach to bringing that to life? So what happens from person A is not going to look like the same for me. It's going to be a version of that, but my own version. And I think similarly, it's important to do that with leaders who you don't want to copy. So what are some behaviors that you are observing over time that you would say is poor leadership? And I do write about this a little bit in my book. It's almost like that phrase, like, oh, I'm turning into my parents, right? Like everything that drove you crazy about your parents when you were a child, and then you get to a certain age and you find you're operating like your parents because it's what you know. With poor leadership habits, sometimes you end up transferring them without realizing it because that's what you know. So it's equally important to be able to recognize the poor traits of a leader as well as the positive ones. And in both instances, determine, what am I going to do with this information and how am I going to proceed as an individual and put my spin on my leadership style?
What I have learned, and I had gone through, almost everyone has gone through that, when you see someone performing well, you try to imitate. Whether they are film stars, whether they are your seniors, your mentors, your leader, even your parents, like you rightly said. And we try to imitate. And that's how you become your personality. In a inner self, you know that you are not that right person. But because you're seeing success, other getting successful over there, we try to follow that path. And that's what happened, that we become a mixture of multiple personality. And we forget what we are. So one thing which we had also explored, and in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that why you should be follow even an imperfect path, because your inner self. So the discussion came in when this warrior Arjun said that I'll not fight, and he start talking like a wise person, like a teacher. So that's where Krishna said that your own dharma or your own role is a warrior. On a battlefield, you can't become a teacher, and you are trying to imitate that teacher quality because you are fear. You have emotional overload inside, and that's why you are trying to find out a way. Right? And then he explains that how human composition is. What are those different nature composition you have? Passion, goodness, and laziness kind of thing. So these are the three things which all of us carry. Based on the composition of that, our nature defines. And if I am passionate and I become a teacher, it's going to be a problem. If I'm aggressive, I'll become a teacher, it's going to be a problem. And I'm very calm. I am a wise person. I can't go and fight a war. I start giving lessons someone in the war field, which is not right thing. Correct?
Yeah.
So that's how personality impact, and that's what I wanted to understand, that how this is becoming in a common thing in modern leadership today. Now, then moving forward, what happens is, one of the discussion which is very fascinating, which I always look into, is that Krishna has never asked Arjun to run away from battlefield, or he has never asked that the things will get changed. We can go and negotiate. He has said that pressure will be there. Your responsibility will be there. The uncertainty will be remain, and you can't renounce the world. Most of the time, when at least in my family in India, I had seen that Bhagavad Gita is always talked about renouncing the world. So when I started practicing, he said, you are going to renounce. He said, if you really understand, there is not a single place where it has been told that you leave the battlefield.
Yeah.
You stay there, you fight. And that's where, today many leaders try to solve burnout through productivity systems. Internally, simply they are disconnected from meaning, purpose, and themselves. So what do you think? Burnout has become, common at every leadership panel, and I've seen that everyone, talking about burnout. Is it about more about workload, or something different inside which is misaligned, which is creating this burnout?
Oof. That is a wonderful question. And it's a tough one to answer because I do think sometimes it's situational and cultural as well. I'll tell you a quick story. When I'm American, and when I first worked overseas, the first place I worked was in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, the concept of burnout is recognized, and it is a clinical diagnosis. And, companies recognize if a diagnosis has been made, and arrangements can be made to, rehabilitate an employee who is to have a burnout. So I come from the US where, this was almost a decade ago that I was in the Netherlands. I knew what the term burnout meant, but not in a corporate sense, because that doesn't exist. It didn't exist in the US. This was pre-pandemic. No one was talking about burnout. I come from New York, hustle culture. Go, 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 go. You work 20. And so I didn't believe it at first because it was such a foreign concept to me. And over my time there, I started to realize, wow, the Dutch are onto something here. This is real and this is true. And this is something that can't be swept under the rug. And when I came back to the US, it was even more front and center. And then we headed, the world headed shortly into the pandemic after that, upon my return to the US. And I was able to recognize and spot burnout so much more clearly in myself, in others. But I was in a culture that, again, still didn't allow for that. I think there are a lot of different elements to burnout. The first is awareness, right? Of I am actually burnt out. And then you need to figure out why. Are you doing work that you actually enjoy, but it's just too much and at, too crazy of a pace? Can you make an adjustment? Or are you really in the wrong place? Have you changed? Or has the environment around you changed and it's no longer a match? It's draining your energy more than giving you energy. And I think those things are not mutually exclusive. I really do think it can be a combination of multitude of elements, which actually makes it such a difficult, it's not cut and dry. And then you add the cultural layer to it, and that can make it difficult as well. Is it accepted and acknowledged, or is it brushed under the rug as if it doesn't exist? So it's a multifaceted question, I believe.
You're right. And it is multifaceted, and it has multiple dimension of burnout. What we call in India is yajna. Yajna is a ritual where community get together. There will be a small well kind of thing, very small, not a big one. People will sit around and there will be fire. And people will contribute grains, ghee, and a lot of things over there. Now, over the years, I have understood that this is just a ritual. Recently, maybe a couple of months back, I really understood when I deep dive into this what yajna is, and that you said it has multifaceted. It has 12 different ways of yajna already explained 5,000 years back. And this yajna, and it very well resonated with your book. So it's about the first yajna we just talked about. It's a conference room. So I had created, it took a lot of time for me to articulate into modern day and explain it to corporate way, but a conference room. So in conference room, when multiple people are there, one of the things which become burnout is only one person speak. And
Okay.
rest of the people do not contribute, do not add any value. And at the end, that leader get burnout. So yajna, the first yajna explain is that you contribute. When you are in a conference room, there is no title, no role. Everyone is equal. Based on your learning, your capability, you contribute. If you have smaller wealth, you add less grain. You have more wealth, you add more grain. That grain is an example of ego. Don't carry all of those things. It was just a practice ground to explain people at the time. So this is one burnout, one phase of burnout. The other phase is when that leader perform too much in a day. He doesn't understand that he has exhausted the energy. He's not aligned with what is happening now after 7, 6, 8 hours. And he feels that I'm doing a lot of things. I want to do more, but my body, my energy is not helping me out. And that's where those first meditation discussion started over there. Like, so there are 12 different ways how burnout can impact any person. It can be 12 together, it can be one individual, or maybe multiple together, like you rightly say, right? And that's what we, it was very simply explained, but all the time, even today, you ask 90% of the Indian about yajna, they'll only talk about rituals. Hardly 10% know that this is a real human behavior which is being controlled, and help people to learn that don't get into that trap of burnout before reaching over there. So this is what my understanding. But I think practically you had explained culture and then language, and there are a lot of things which come across when and that's in burnout with outcome, all those of things, right? Now, one thing which also surprised me today, and I'd seen many leaders doing that. I'm still figuring out how do we crack that, but maybe we can discuss between you and me today. That many leaders silently carry a lot of emotional weight, and that weight is about, everything depends on me. If I stop controlling, everything will fall apart. So Krishna's idea that suffering increases when ego start believing everything depends on me. And that's where, I see that someone wants to hold everything together, kind of micromanagement or macro management of the team. Everything should be controlled through me, else otherwise everything will be fall apart. Now, it may be right in some of the type of people you have, but I'm just talking about a leader. This can be one of the leadership styles, for an example. But taking that style, many leaders silently carry a lot of emotional weight. And that responsibility, holding the team together, culture, outcome, people, expectation, eventually that leadership becomes emotionally too heavy. So have you seen that invisible pressure in leadership where people are capable but slowly become so exhausted and carry too much internally? And have you yourself ever seen that, getting into that kind of trap?
I absolutely have. In the spirit of vulnerability, I have been there. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be when you realize I put myself in this position, and now how do I undo the damage both for my own sanity and for the sake of my team? There was a story recently, actually, I was sharing with a former colleague. We were reminiscing about the early days of the pandemic. And she and I were on the task force of the company I was working for at the time. So we were in charge of the crisis management, and that was both internally and externally. And with that came a lot of responsibility. At the time, I was in a senior position, but I wasn't on the executive team, and everyone else on the task force was on the executive team. So naturally, a lot of colleagues were coming to me with questions because they didn't want to go to the CEO or the CFO or the name your functional lead. And so I was overburdened with my own day-to-day work that I was still responsible for, the tasks of the task force, and then the additional onset of the questions and queries coming to me from my peers and my colleagues. And it took me, I thought I had to do it all. I thought it was my responsibility to save the employee base of the company. Not correct. I can tell you that. And it didn't go very well. It led to some really exhausting days, long days, nights, weekends. And I hit a wall at some point where I said, I can't do this anymore. And even though it was 2020 and everyone was stuck at home, I did take a few days off to step back and close my laptop and sleep and eat and reflect. And I think looking back on that moment, it was terrifying for so many different reasons. There was, context is important. There was a lot going on in the world that was out of control, and no one knew. There was no playbook for any of this. But the learning there was the same as learning would have been under normal circumstances. There are X amount of employees at this company. There's never a moment in time where it's all sitting on your shoulders. That's not the way a company functions. And you're right, it does lead to ego and heightened thoughts of importance. And that's not a great headspace to get in either. That's pretty dangerous because that's only going to lead to the burnouts and the crashes and, whatever you want to call it. And, it could do some reputational damage as well. Yeah, hard lessons learned from the battlefield, I guess I would say.
And I just want to add, if we continue with this, you're also making a big damage to the team because your team will not develop. And one of the only responsibility of the leader is to build more leaders. That's what I see.
That's correct. And you're essentially taking opportunities away from other people because you are so selfish to hold on to it because you think it's your responsibility. Maybe it's your responsibility as a team to get the task done, but the way in which it gets accomplished, that's always up for debate. So, yeah.
And every one of us, including myself, has gone through this phase. Only difference is the person who has stuck into this phase has become now habit. And he or she started believing that this is the only leadership style which will help us to grow. And that habit is something which are very damaging. And that's where we also discuss about awareness, only self-awareness. That's it. Just be aware that what you are doing, slowly the habit will go away. If awareness is not there, it will become a big disaster at some point of time.
Yeah. And it's interesting with awareness because I think in my younger years, I thought I was pretty self-aware, and I came to realize I was actually not. And that was a big eye-opener. That was a big learning in itself. And once you unlock the self-awareness, it's a very humbling moment. And, I do think there's a shift in a lot of people's careers where when the self-awareness does get unlocked, and that's usually around the point in time where you're going from being a member of the team to leading the team. And I will say, I never thought I would enjoy being a leader as much as I do, because it means giving other people the chance to rise. It's not about me anymore. And in some ways, it's been very, in addition to being humbling, it's a relief. Like, sharing the burden, but you obviously you find ways to put pressure on yourself in other ways always. But yeah, I think it's a really tough, harsh moment when the mirror is held up to you, but it's so crucial in order to make that transition from individual contributor to becoming a leader of a team.
You're right. And so many times my team or people around me said that, how did you learn people manager? Because you had been an individual contributor for years. I said that still I don't know. Only thing I know is that be good to the people. And what I try to do is I see everyone equal. And one of the learning which I had, maybe some other time we can discuss maybe full episode on that. Seeing yourself into others, which always we see that, try to get into others' shoes. But seeing others into yourself, that is something which is, make it 360-degree connect between you and others. And that's where, the real leadership starts. It's not about leading and controlling people. Now, one thing which we keep on discussing, that in the battlefield, Arjun was not physical weak. He was the most competent, most skilled warrior. But he was in its emotional overload. Now, being a woman, I want to bring one of the perspective today that many women leaders today carry many and lot of invisible emotional pain together. They have a pressure to being capable, calm, likable, strong, emotionally aware of everything around them, but rarely having that space of simply be the human. Correct? Because you can help us to understand more on that. So do you think that today the leadership spaces generally allow those kind of vulnerability? You talked about that a couple of minutes back, right? And do many leaders still feel that pressure to emotionally self-protect all the time?
That is a deep question as well. I don't think there's one answer to that. I think it's very situational. Not every company or organization operates the same, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. So you do have different environments where there is psychological safety to be yourself and be your true self. And then you have a lot of organizations out there where they're stuck in decades past and that psychological safety doesn't exist. And I think the burden for anyone or female, but particularly women, it depends on what environment. If you're not in a supportive environment, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. And I think, unfortunately, there are still many environments that are not supportive to, the plight of women. Men and women are different. And, one is not more intelligent than the other. I don't mean that, but we are different, and that's okay. And there's so much research that shows when you have gender balance and all types of diversity balance, those are the teams that thrive. So I think as a society, we need to look at the research and the data and figure out how to bring everyone along and create environments where everyone can thrive, not just women.
Yeah.
But make sure we're not shutting them out because we continue to operate the way we did 100 years ago. And times have changed. We've progressed.
Yeah.
Or we think we've progressed. We're trying to progress. So really, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. And like you said, we could have a whole conversation just on this question alone.
Yeah. So for me, it's all of a talent. If I look people equally, whether men, women, or whomsoever it is, they are the talent and they are the resource and very useful resource for the organization. But everyone has a different aspect of their life. Forget about gender diversity. Even with the same gender, everyone will have a different personal life.
Yep.
They have a different impact. You can't expect that everyone can equally perform, even they are skillful, because their emotional state changes every
Yep.
time. And that can be anything. And if you, being a leader, if you don't understand that, which state your people are going in, not even your direct people, there's people who are getting influence from you. And that's where, the understanding comes. We can make a number of
Well,
policies and rules around that. But if we just make one change into ourselves, that see everyone equal, see yourself into the others and see others into yourself, things will become more smoother rather than following policy. One of the things which we discuss is that you can make a number of policies, but people will only follow what leader do. They will not open a book and look at those policies. You can keep on doing training refresher every time, but they will only follow that under this situation what he has done. That's what it follows. And then the next thing comes up is how do you see when in this battlefield everything was under pressure because war is announced, armies are ready, and this warrior is not fighting. But under this chaos, Krishna keeps himself very calm, try to understand someone's problem. That fellow Arjuna asked 74 questions throughout this conversation. And not in a one question, Krishna was into anger mode or any other that kind of thing. Now, when you talk about boardroom or a conference room, sometimes leader create pressure and some create clarity. So what do you think people will emotionally remember most about that leader?
Yeah, I think if you make someone feel uncomfortable, they're going to remember that. If you create that psychologically safe environment for someone to thrive, they will remember that as well. And, there are a lot of leaders who they're so focused on the wrong things. And in my mind, focusing on the wrong things, you can't just be focused on the business objective without understanding the human element of the people in the room. Not everyone operates the same, and not everyone's going to be motivated to deliver on the business objectives in the same way. So I always think it's quite terrible when you get into a room and you have a leader kind of just calling people out, making them look stupid, asking for things that could have been in a private conversation, or, sometimes proving a point that this person doesn't know anything, or, what good does that do anyone? It's going to make the person feel terrible. They're going to have no motivation to perform. They're made to feel ashamed, and you've gotten nothing out of them in terms of business result. So I don't understand why anyone would see that as, a successful management style personally. But you said something earlier that I think is key and crucial, and something I like to talk about. It's about listening. So, you get into the room with your team, give them the opportunity, yes, have an agenda, keep the conversation on task, but give them the opportunity to share. And as the leader, figure out how to distill what you need from that. And if you don't have that, be smart about the follow-up questions, or take the conversation into a more private forum instead of, publicly shaming someone in front of the full team. But I do think it starts with listening, because another thing you said, and I like to agree with, I think we can find commonality with anyone in any circumstance. You just have to listen for that cue to grasp onto and to be able to foster that connection. But I do think it's possible, even with someone, they could be opposite spectrums in terms of politics, values, but you both work at the same place. That's a commonality. So it's your job as the leader to figure out what is that commonality and how to bring that out and use that to drive the relationship and the conversation.
Right. And I had personally gone through this phase. I'm an introvert person and I don't hesitate to accept that. And I hardly communicate to people if I don't have anything to do with them. And introvert people get energy from inside. Extrovert people get energy from outside. There's nothing wrong about it, both of them. But when it comes to communication, right, I have never hesitated any point of time. And I now with this podcast, I'm getting requests and meeting multiple people with different discipline. See, idea of this podcast is just to translate that wisdom into modern day leadership. But now I'm meeting a lot of different leadership. So different kind of leader. Last week I was discussing with one of the innovator in the United States itself. Now, what you said that, there is something common between all of us, which we don't have awareness to identify. And I would say that most of the people I have talked, including yourself, right? We were able to make that connection, and we were able to make multiple conversation together, not only for recording, but also for individual connect.
Yeah.
And it's a different age group. I think you and me are maybe similar age group, but I'm talking to very younger and very older people as well, right? And that's where your point comes up that, it has to be a connect which comes up, right, between one and another. And once you identify that connect, we all are equal. One of the metaphor which I keep on saying that if you have a car, right, every car runs on gas. The gas is common in everyone. The car is different. That's what we are. The soul is common. That's an energy is common between you and me and everyone. Only our car is different. There is no gas in the car will not run. Gas doesn't decide speed and direction. It is the driver who decide, your mind who decide the speed and direction. So that's where there is a commonality between all of us. We just have to have that awareness and vision to find out.
Yeah. I fully agree. And I think that's one of the most powerful learnings that one can have, because once you understand that, it unlocks a world of possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we sign off, one thing which is, very common today, you just touched upon today, in this age of communication and then human aspect together. So one thing we repeatedly keep on discussing that intelligence alone is not a wisdom. Right. So when AI has come up, now machine can analyze, they can write, predict, automate many things, even communicate. Right. Krishna deeply teaches us always about consciousness, presence, and awareness. Now, between both of this world, I'm sure consciousness and awareness will win. but how do we bring that to realization of the leaders that the AI and the technology should help us, or we should not become, the servant of those technologies?
Yeah, this is also a topic we can have a full conversation on. But with this topic in particular, I always like to remind people what we're seeing now is just the next evolution of the way that we're going to be living in the future. And so if we think back to the turn of the last century, the introduction of machines in factories, there was a world before those machines where humans were doing all the work with their hands. Now the machines came in and presumably they made life better for those humans. Quality of life went up, efficiency of business went up. There were a lot of benefits. But at the time, I can only imagine the factory workers were terrified that they were going to lose their job, or they were not going to have the right skills to be able to ever make something of themselves again. And you fast forward 100 years, 150 years, look where we are today. Well, that wasn't true. We just evolved as well. So I think what's exciting about the introduction of AI and all this technology, we are on the cusp of a gigantic evolution of humans. And I don't know what my job is going to look like in 5 years. I don't know what it will look like in 15 years. And of course, that's scary because human nature, we want to know, we want certainty. But it's also exciting because I think when you give in to the fact that you don't know what you don't know, vulnerability, you gain a sense of confidence that you'll figure it out. They figured it out back then. We'll figure it out in the future. And I think the machines have proven to make our lives better and more efficient. And maybe it frees up time so that we're not a slave to the devices and we can go do other things. Maybe we actually go back to a simpler way of life. Maybe we get rid of burnout because of AI. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm personally very excited to see where this all goes. Uneasy at times for sure, because I am a human, but overall excited and positive about what's to come.
True. Only thing which I feel that if we want, this is my personal experience and personal learning, and a lot of things I had covered about AI from this ancient wisdom as well, that it won't able to emulate your subtle intellect. So whatever AI does is they're bringing a lot of analysis about the gross intellect information, what you have accumulated, stored, and it can, create a lot of new thing for you. But the power of reasoning and asking question to yourself will not come up. So
Yeah.
I keep on telling everyone an example that you open up a Google map, ask for a location of your office, it gives 2 or 3 options. If your intellect is alive, you will choose an option which is more safer, even though it is longer. But your intellect is not alive, you will end up selecting only the shortest route, which might be very narrow, may not be a good road. You may end up damaging your car. Correct? Now, that's where the human angle remains in all of this technology. Even though AI comes up, there will be something which you need to decide. If you don't decide, it will not move. The way you respond, it will respond back to you. That's a law of karma. That's how AI works.
Yeah.
It's a law of karma. The
I
kind of
agree.
prompt you write, it will
Yep.
respond.
I agree. And that's exactly it. I know a lot of people refer to the AI as the co-pilot, right? Well, that implies there's a pilot and the pilot is us. And
Yes, yeah.
we will always be the pilot. We need to be the pilot. So yeah, I fully agree with you.
So, Dayna, thanks a lot for joining us. It was a very, I was engrossed totally into the conversation, didn't look at the clock, and it happens multiple times with me. But thanks again for joining us today on Beyond the Battlefield. I'm really looking forward few more conversation, which will definitely we will able to co-create many things together. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
What I personally loved about today's discussion is that it reminded us that leadership is not about pretending to be fearless. It is about becoming honest enough to see yourself clearly. Today we explored burnout, ego, self-awareness, authentic leadership, AI, reverse mentorship, and the invisible pressure leaders silently carry every day. But underneath all these topics, there was one common thread: the courage to stop performing leadership and start living it. And maybe real leadership begins the moment we stop asking, "How do I look strong?" and start asking, "How do I stay true to myself while serving others?" Dayna, thank you again for bringing so much honesty, reflection, and humanity into this conversation. And to everyone listening, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who may be silently fighting their own inner battle. Because sometimes, one honest conversation can change the way a person sees themselves. If you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Battlefield, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if this conversation sparked a thought inside you, write to us at beyondthebattlefield@outlook.en. And do check the GPT companion link in the description to continue exploring these ideas more deeply. Until next time, remember, the battlefield is never only outside. It is always inside.